So welcome to all the viewers of Ambedkar Caravan Media. Today we have with us Professor Keshav Kumar, who has a very interesting career. Right now he is working as a professor in philosophy in Delhi University, and he specializes in Ambedkar studies, and also he has authored a very important book on the political philosophy of B.R. Ambedkar, an inquiry into the theoretical foundations of the Dalit movement. So that's a political philosophy is a very vast topic, as we know. Uh, Brother Keshav Kumar has a very interesting career. He worked in several institutes on different capacities. He also was working in the Pondicherry University for some time before he shifted to Delhi, and now he's a full professor in philosophy. We know that the various aspects and the dimensions of Baba Sahib's life has not been, understood. Even when understood, they are not recognized. But we know that Baba Sahib Ambedkar was a philosopher par excellence, and I have heard Brother Kishore Kumar, on few occasions. But one of the occasions, the way he has explained, vis-a-vis the philosophy and Baba Sahib Ambedkar's approach to philosophy, because he was a philosopher, as we can see, and he was a practitioner of the philosophy. And it's we need to philosophize in order to really change the world. So today we have somebody who has read widely into Baba Sahib's literature, his writing, his speeches. He tries to understand Baba Sahib's ideas, not only in the political field, but also in the field of philosophy of religion and economic philosophy. He has read widely. So we have a very apt person for this very interesting topic today. The topic today is Baba Sahib Ambedkar and reconstruction in philosophy, for reconstruction of the world. Because for Baba Sahib Ambedkar, philosophizing didn't just mean to have a kind of a thinking, but also he wanted to reconstruct the world through this kind of an ideological, philosophical, ideational position, if I can say that. And we know that he has also invented method, for example, how to study the philosophy of Hinduism. So this is a topic which is often neglected, and we look at all different dimensions of Baba Sahib's life, but one of the most important dimensions of Baba Sahib's life, that is his way to his approach to philosophy, the way he practiced philosophy is very important. And I think as a community we need to know a lot on this. So we have no other than our philosopher brother, Professor Keshava. Brother, welcome to Ambedkar Caravan. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, JB Mangesh.
So I think with this brief introduction of our my dear Anna, and also the topic that he is going to talk about today, I would like to request Professor Keshav Kumar to please take over the online dais and address our people in terms of this very important topic. Brother Keshav.
Okay, thank you, Mangesh, for suggesting this topic, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, reconstruction in philosophy for the reconstruction of the world. Very apt topic. Not only it is one way, it is reconstructing the philosophy, that is, then it is also suggest the philosophy for the reconstruction of the world. It is very meaningful statement, is the title itself. In fact, Mangesh suggested me with the intention that thing to address both the purpose and function of the philosophy, and very particularly the importance of significance of Ambedkar's philosophy in a contemporary times. You all know philosophy or philosopher is a privileged term. Very casually using Mangesh Keshav Kumar is our philosopher. No, but it is not so easy to accept the community is a philosopher. Somebody has to be philosopher. The word a philosopher is reserved for certain people. They may agree for the thing. You may be good, hard worker and some kind of social activist and all. There's no problem. When come to the idea of the philosophy or philosopher, it is creates some kind of uncomfort for many people. The same happens with the Ambedkar also. when Ambedkar, we try to project or we want to say, or we not need to project, you want to assert, reaffirm that Ambedkar as a philosopher, it is, they feel that it is some kind, it is create the celebration of Ambedkar as a contributor to philosophic ideas. It creates some kind of tension among the academic elites in this country. Then immediately they bounce back. In fact, it is not just casually I'm telling this thing. We experienced many times in many days when we try to say philosopher Ambedkar as a philosopher or philosopher of Ambedkar. Immediately they used to bounce back with so many questions to belittling the image of the Ambedkar. They have very interesting repulsive attitude to recognize Ambedkar as a philosopher. They often argue that Ambedkar is not a philosopher in real sense, sir. He is a constitutional chairman of the drafting committee of the constitution, and he is a social reformer, or he is Dalit intellectual. They want to reduce to the particular kind of community. They don't want, they are not happy to celebrate Ambedkar as a philosopher. Then immediately they will try to, when you try to say this thing, yes, Ambedkar is a philosopher, then they'll come with the, no, sir, he doesn't have epistemology. He doesn't belongs to the grand philosophical systems, and he doesn't belong to any kind of the philosophical system which we are familiar, and claims that it is, they want to dismiss Ambedkar as a thinker. But in reality, if you look at any cursory reading of Ambedkar reveals that the philosophical strength of Ambedkar and importance in social reconstruction. Just, I don't think any scholar who claims as a Indian philosopher, or the traditional scholars in Pandits, they claims more, boast about themselves, the philosophical kind of scholarship. I don't think anybody match, at least in modern times, nobody matched to the Ambedkar contemporary times, the way vast reading of Indian philosophy, the way it is interrogated in Indian philosophy. His purpose is not just to study philosophy. As a victim of the social system, as a victim of the caste system, where the source of this victimization is. Try to look at the caste system. Caste system, it is not just only social system or social practice and the values people are practicing. The roots of the caste system lies in the religion. In fact, religion has a sanctity for this kind of the social system, the value system. Religion means, it is not just religion. Religion doesn't mean anything unless until it comes with some kind of commands, some kind of ideas. Then it is not religion, it is a religious text, plays important role. What we call a religious literature or sacred literature, what you talk about. Even literature also doesn't stand on its own. Somebody has to be instrumental to play a role to propagate and also to has a grip over the people, and it has to be systematically, one has to take in on a mission to propagate this one, to make it as a part of our life, the philosophical idea. Then the priestly class played important role, or the Brahminical class plays important role. In support of this Brahminical class also, you know it very well, they're not independent. They're always patronized with somebody, whoever king it is there, it is somebody patronized, they're ready to sing that song. That's what it's happened. And patronization plays a important role in looking at this. That way, Ambedkar, when try to look at the link between the society, the caste system, and the way untouchability, practice of untouchability, caste system, and Hindu religion, and Shastras, and it is a priestly class, and it is ultimately the ruling class. The link he identified, they not only identified this thing, the philosophy, when you try to understand philosophy, when try to interrogate Indian philosophy, and in the process, he redefined Indian philosophy. He has some kind of problems and objections, which is the way it is celebrated in India, the philosophy or the Indian philosophy, in other words, the Brahminical philosophy. He constructed Indian philosophy from a Buddhist perspective against the dogmatic Brahmanism. In a simple level, we can say this thing. Yeah, of course, it requires much more this thing. It is not so simple the way it is like that. He, in fact, redefined even Buddhism, and he redefined and also the way it is interrogated, the Indian philosophy or Brahminical philosophy, it is also very important. Yes, now we can say Ambedkar is not a philosopher in a sense, the philosopher belonging to the dominant philosophical traditions of this country. He is not a philosopher in that sense. The canons of the philosophy, what they are trying to say this thing, he may not be fit in that kind of canons, what they try to project. This is Indian philosophy. He differs with the existing philosophical practice. Existing means dominant Brahminical philosophical practices and the styles of doing philosophy. He is not justified. His philosophy is now justified the social isolation, discrimination, oppression, exploitation carried in the name of the caste, or the way all the the religious text, it is a sanctity of this kind of social situation. And at the same time, his philosophy is not justified the status quo. The way the Brahminical philosophy want to maintain the status quo, his philosophy is no way it is try to maintain the status quo, and it is in a status quo system means where few people have the privileges at the cost of negating the majority of the people in the country, their life, their ideas, their struggles, and their kind of understand their worldviews, the way it is negated. That's why very small minority philosophy in India, it is established as the Indian philosophy or dominant philosophy that we have seen in a contemporary times. It is how Vedanta emerged as a meta-narrative of Indian philosophy. That way, in this way, I would like to see Ambedkar is not a philosopher in that sense. Ambedkar is very much is negated this kind of philosophical, where we try to generally try to identify the philosophy, that kind of system, it try to verify. For him, Ambedkar, for philosophy is that it is a free social order that ensuring the human dignity. You very often Ambedkar try to talk about the Hindu social order. It is where freedom is totally denied, and there the Brahminical philosophy justified and legitimized unequal society, social hierarchies in the name of the caste system. Not only that one, it is all possible ways. Its philosophy justified the caste system and untouchability. In that philosophy, we expect human beings should be central to the philosophical system, their ideas, but he not recognize fellow human beings as a human beings. It is treating even the human beings, suppose they try to any reference to human beings, it is a very particularly Dalits, and they treated as a inhuman and subhuman way, and by denying the basic rights, and it is for them, the philosophy means it's other way we can say that thing, justifying the slavery and negating the human association. We don't see any strength of philosophy, just negating the human association and negating the human being. What kind of philosophy it is there? That's what it is, one has to think about that one. Ambedkar, that's why. Ambedkar is not a philosopher in that sense. Ambedkar is a philosopher who revolted this kind of slavery, who revolted against the untouchability, who revolted against the caste system, who revolted against the Brahminical religion, who revolted against the unfreedom and the where the society where there is no freedom, there are no rights ensured for the majority of the people in this country. That way, his philosophy is against the unhuman or inhuman undemocratic value system. And it is for him, for Ambedkar, philosophy means celebration of the freedom. Philosophy means ensuring the assertion of the self-respect. Philosophy means the feeling, the one way it is ensuring human dignity. It is also assurance of the one kind of self-esteem. That is the philosophy. That should be the philosophy. In a country, in the way the world, you can look at this thing. Philosophy means it is not only just interpreting the world, or it is understanding the world. It is also critical evaluation, not only critical evaluation of belief systems and practices, and more than that, it is also it is not only critical evaluation and interpretation of the world, and also it is that philosophy has a role of the emancipation of the people. Emancipation also is very much it is there. Philosophy, it is not only just only rational enterprises. Philosophy is not only thinking at enterprises. It is also has its own, the way it has to be one kind of the moral practice, and one kind of, it is open the moral horizon to have the life in a much more dignified, to have the just society. Philosophy means not only democracy, it is also ensuring idea of the justice. One kind of just society should be play central role in the philosophical discourses. That way, let me try to say about something related to the how to open up. When try to look at it is Ambedkar's philosophical approach, and we can look at what kind of just let us have some kind of caricaturing the Ambedkar philosophical approach and method. We can take some of the elements of his philosophical method. For him, philosophy has to nurture the moral community. Moral community in the sense, the society already, the where we are living, the society, it is the society where it is caste society, where the Brahminical society is very much, it is the Brahminical religion very much offering the kind of society. The society, it is also based on, or it is kind to see the social isolation is a central point for that kind of the society. The not only social hierarchy and social isolation. Isolation means it is social segregation. Isolation means social humiliation. It is a social discrimination. It is injustice. That kind of philosophy, the way the Hindu society, we can see the social association, social isolation means that way. Ambedkar is very much against this kind of isolation. You know it very well. He's against isolation means denial of the protection, denial of justice, and denial of opportunity. These are words of Ambedkar. It is not mine. Ambedkar tried to say this thing, isolation is act of anti-social. When you philosophy, you try to say this thing, Indian philosophy, they're talking great about this thing. And without addressing this kind of isolation, isolation is an anti-social act. Without addressing the philosophy, anti-isolation, social hierarchy, the kind of discrimination practices in this country, how can you say this is a philosophy? This is not only the isolation, then isolation, they not only just it is prescribing, it is isolation, and is also, they try to look at this thing, the isolation should be there should not be bring about the human solidarity among the people, and they also see to that there should be a of isolation among the different social communities and classes. That way, Brahminical philosophy very systematically work. That way, when you try to overcome this kind of isolation, when you try to negate this kind of isolation, one can say this thing, isolation means want of sympathy, want of fellowship, and want of some kind of consideration. There exactly, Ambedkar, there he invokes the idea of the feeling of the community based on righteous social life. For him, social is a central. The whole philosophy, we can look at, when you try to look at Ambedkar philosophy, we can say the central point, it is that it is a social. Social means, he tried to define social. What do you mean by the social? Social means, what do you mean by the society defines? Society means the way people participates, where people associates, and where people communicates, where people shares. And it is also, it is one kind of community. Community means where some kind of kinship relations very much it is there. In the process, he tried to say caste is anti-social. The way caste system is supported, the way the Hinduism supporting caste system, that Hinduism as a religion, it is a anti-socially tried to say this one. It is not to be qualified religion, not to be qualified even the society, social. Like that, he want to redefine the very idea of the social. It is based on some kind of the principles, and the way some sense of equality, some sense of associated life. And there we know it very well, the way it is when I try to talk about the communicative society, the social endosmosis, he try to use it. Then later, people like Habermas tried to use it as a this universal communication and all. But long back, you can see the Ambedkar, where he tried to address the idea of social, and not only social. From the social, he tried to look at the religion, social, religion to the politics. That way, one can see the ease of doing philosophy with Ambedkar. It is not confined to one particular level. Social means social, religious means religious, politics. There's nothing compartmentalization there. It is interconnected. For them, base seems to be the everyday social life based on righteous social life, their equality, and some kind of concern for fellow human being. Respect, that is the thing. Then let me, people very often try to talk about Indian philosophy. Philosophy, it is mostly principles and theories which we are not understood. Any kind of philosophy, it should be not only systematic understanding and comprehensive understanding of the world, you should make us understanding things very simple. But we have seen most of the philosophers made the things very complicated. By making complicated, making the things are creating some, they devise some kind of language, the tools which are unknown to us. That way, we don't understand what is the purpose and function of the philosophy of that obscurity. Then we can say this thing by the obscurity, they have some intentions are there hidden that we can see this thing very easily. We can identify when you try to say this thing, the philosophy of the practice India, where certain categories, some kind of language they use to understand life. And from there, we can understand what does it mean. It is not philosophy, it is not a theoretical matter, it has a practical potential. It is that way he remains the very practicality of the philosophical ideas, the way he remains the Jean Dewey. And philosophy has roots in the problems of life, and whatever theories philosophy propounds must return to the society as the instruments of social reconstruction. Ideas come from the society. And society, again, you have to be used that ideas to reconstruct the society. That is the purpose and function of the philosophy. Philosophy should be related to the facts. Philosophy should be connect to, it is, you want to reconstruct the society there, and Ambedkar try to say this thing, both it is comparing both Buddha and Marx. There he tried to, very much is identified the way Buddhism and Marxism, he tried to accept this point, the way his life philosophy should be related to the facts and also used for the reconstruction of the society. That's what he tried to, one can say. Then Ambedkar, interestingly, as I told, social I told, and is also interchangeably, we can use the social for the religion, we can say this one. And at the same time, he differentiated the religion of the very Brahminical religion, how he differentiated from the religion, there, Ambedkar tried to use philosophy of religion as a method. For him, religion seems to be central. Religion seems to be the central point. Where he tried to maybe influenced by the Jean Dewey, and it is also to certain extent Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke, who tried to say this thing, French Revolution is against the will of the God, like that. There may be some kind of conservative element might be there in Edmund Burke. He is not identified with that one, but identifying the religion where it is the focal point for the philosophy. Then that way, not only just dogmatic religion and religion of the practices and teaching, you want to critically evaluate their philosophy of religion. You try to critically evaluate the religion. That one, there we can look at his writings, philosophy of Hinduism. The way try to evaluate the philosophy, there initially try to talk about the what is religion, how it is evolved, and what purpose. It is also longing for the life and preserving the life, that may be the principle behind this thing. Later, it will drive towards the morality, that way this thing. Then he tried to look at identified the religion, identified with the social process, and also normative social life, he identified with the religion and all. Then he tried to look at the savage religion to the civilized religion. Then you try to evaluate that kind of religion, use the philosophical approach, that is social utility, and try to evaluate the social savage religion, why one has to believe it. Then you try to look at the social utility. Based on social utility, one can say it is right or wrong. And when come to modern religion, justice for individual is very much important. In that way, he tried to evaluate the Hinduism. How does Hinduism recognize the equality, liberty, and fraternity? Then he tried to say this thing, how it is fails as a religion. Then he tried to say this thing, inequality is the soul of Hinduism, like that we can very much say. Then what I would like to say is philosophical approach. It is realistic, historical, and rationalistic, and also religious. More than religious, his philosophy, more than rationalistic, his philosophy is ethical. That's what I would like to say. Then he is very much used the idea of the reason plays important role for any kind of philosophy. Reason, rationality, the place to understand things and evaluate. Since very particular to evaluate the Indian philosophy or to critically understand the Indian philosophy, dominant Brahminical philosophy, reason plays important. It is only through the reason we can say this thing, why certain things in the name of the philosophy, that philosophy which are otherworldly, or the kind of the ascriptions they imposed on the society without having the basis. Just as he says this thing, it is because of the Vedic authority, it is right, it is a divine authority, you have to agree, without allowing any kind of questioning. That way, the philosophy is practiced, that one it is there. And we believe that thing, yes, rationalism plays important role for anything. And that way, we know it very well historically, how modern societies evolved against the medieval society. It is through the reason they try to critical about the racial, the superstition and medieval religious practices. You know it very well. It is the very reason may be used eliminate the injustice by increasing the intelligence. Then it is that way elimination of the superstition must result in elimination of the injustice. Then he raised one question: why does reason fails to bring the social justice? When try to look at this, the way some other people in the country, it is the people. It is not philosophy is not the way the educated class in the country. Mostly for so many generations, you know it very well, Brahmin class. Then they're educated. Education means they are very much reasoned. But at the same time, you have seen quite contrary to everyday social life, you can see their kind of understanding of the world, the kind of the practices. There he tried to look at the problems involved with the reason. The problems involved in the reason means not reason as such. The reason works as long as it does not come into conflict with the one's vested interest. Then the vested interests are there. They don't want to use that kind of reason. They don't want to carry that kind of reason. There Ambedkar tried to look at the limitations of the rationality. Not only limited rationality, he is also critical about the instrumental rationality. Not only he knows the reason plays important role, he knows that importance. Second is that the how Brahminic class they become silent when their ideas are, when their privileges are they're losing. Then on the selfish interest they don't want to extend the reason in everyday social life, and they don't want to lose their privileges. And then they decide to identify the limitation of that one. Apart from this thing, he tried to see this thing, the instrument reason he tried to locate. Social reasoning is plays important role. The way it reminds, the way he is against the instrumental rationality, it reminds me something like that, the critical thinkers, where it is try to locate the not only critical about the instrumental rationality, the rationality they want to locate in the social inquiry and social historical context. And more than that, they want to look at some kind of emancipation, try to look at the way Ambedkar try to see something like that reminds the critical thinkers of the Frankfurt School, where the people try to look at the philosophy in a different realm that they're taking. Then let me say this thing, how the philosophy, as I told, educated class, the Brahminic class, and they want to have their own philosophy, which is sustained for a long time, their kind of philosophy. Then you know it very well, the kind of philosophy, the mostly it is based on some kind of myths, the kind of philosophical literature, what you try to say the philosophical literature, the country, or myths, Puranas, Dharma Shastras, and all these things we can say, it is the systematically, it is based on some kind of lies, some kind of myths, not only lies and myths, it is not based on the reason. You know it very well. And it is more than that, but it is also systematically propagated and all. Systematically propagated. That means philosophy, it is the in there he tried to bring the link between these are the people who are the powerful class. The power plays important role in propagating and hegemonizing and institutionalizing that ideas, and there we can see this thing. Then he tried to talk about, Ambedkar tried to see this thing. These lies must be unmasked. The way Brahminic philosophy is surviving by propagating a myth and by creating the fear among the masses. And there, you know it very well, for the people that man Foucault, the postmodern thinker, Foucault, a post-structuralist, talks about the importance of the power, how power plays important role in creating some kind of the truth or some kind of sense of rationality. And the way Ambedkar tried to see this thing, what makes one dominant over another is the power. Power, he also tried to say this thing, power is not only economical, but also lies in the social status and religion. And try to look at the way Marxists engage power and authority only in relation to the economy. Ambedkar reminds us that thing, power is not only just economical, it is also lies in social status as a power, religion as a power, and that way he tried to say the importance of the power, how it is. Then Ambedkar also reminds us that thing, power is needed to destroy the power. Power is needed to destroy the power. Every relations, everything is a power related and all. There's nothing, it can't be escaped from this thing that Foucault used to say. And at the same time, the power is needed to destroy the power. For political, of course, people.
Brother, it's okay. Are you frozen? We can hear you.
Hear me, no?
Yeah. Very well, very well. Your video is frozen now, but before that it was fine. You know, the audio, visual, both were fine.
This one, it is something. It is. Video is all right now?
No, video is, I think, frozen, but your voice is clear.
Now let me see how to see this one. Video.
Your voice is very crystal clear. Now it's okay. Now it's okay.
Right. Something.
It's very intriguing thought. No, you know, it just froze there. It's very intriguing. What you're saying is very, very interesting. Please, brother.
No, some notification is coming. That's why just to touch the phone.
No problem. Please.
Okay. Then further Ambedkar tried to, it is not just only celebration of the power. Ambedkar tried to talk about. Then how to make use of the power ethical. That is the central point for Ambedkar and all. How to make use of the power ethical. That way one can see when you try to look at the Ambedkar, the important their ethic, power and ethics is plays important role from the beginning. Then for this, Ambedkar also tried to say this thing. Then is to get the power, untouchables must strive for education and spread of knowledge. There also have to be counter discourse has to be started, and that way they also have to be their philosophical positions has to be hegemonized, against the Brahminical hegemony. You also create some kind of hegemony. There he reminds me Gramsci. Then not only Gramsci's idea, there we extended. We can't have the political revolution without religious revolution. Some kind of social hegemony plays important role and all. It is something like that is, I don't know why people are not much, it is related to see this kind of elements, but the people very often celebrate Gramsci, but never try to see this kind of elements. Very much Ambedkar people very much emphasize the way hegemony plays important role. It is something new thinking at the time itself. Even before Maurya dynasty, it is there it is happened, the religious revolution took place. Like that, he has given so many examples like that. Then he tried to talk about, as I already pointed out, the educated class is different And when the Brahmin class, then they're privileged, they don't want to live their privileges, and that's why they don't want to develop the philosophy. That's why we have seen initially there may be people say there's no development in the science in this country. He said this thing. It is because of the Brahmin class, their mindset. If I talk about, and once upon a time it is there for the science development of the science, how it is got arrested. He tried to say this thing. Later, there's no progress of the science. These people, the Brahmin class, because they engaged in producing the smrutis and they're not interested in the progress of science. The progress of the science means they know the implication of that one, and they are not ready to invest such a level to damaging and to losing their privileges and all. And there Ambedkar tried to differentiate. It is the Brahminic class, it is educated class, enlightened but selfish. Second is that Ambedkar differentiated between the educated class and intellectual class. We should be very careful. That means where educated class, the educated class, the very Brahminical educated class, the way they have their selfish motives are there. When come to intellectual class, if I talk about, they have to rise above above their social affiliation, above the social affinity of any class or any interest. They have to above that one, and their understanding, it is some kind of different, and it is that way. He's very much clear that the intellectuals has to give the direction to the society, and the way intellectuals in the country failed in their role to play that role. He tried to say this thing. At the same time, he's reasserted that there's a need of intellectuals which is give the direction to the society, and there we can see the Ambedkar try to provide the direction for the largest masses of the country. He also tried to look at that kind of intellectual activity. That may try to look at the philosophy and all. Then apart from this thing, and then Ambedkar's philosophical approach from the beginning, it is there where Indian philosophy, we didn't find any historical approach we can find. We only are familiar with the philosophical ideas. We are familiar with we have no historical sense in writing the books of history, Indian philosophers, we didn't find any history. That means their Ambedkar very much is concerned about the Indian history. And at the same time, people try to say this thing. There is we have the India society evolved from the common culture, like that they used to say. Some kind of hegemonizing and unifying kind of Indian philosophy, the picture of Indian philosophy they try to do. But it is, there have never been such a common Indian culture Ambedkar tried to talk about. Then historically, there may be the Brahminic India, Buddhist India, and also Hindu India. And then he tried to talk about more than the Muslim invade. When history, we try to look at this thing more than the Hindu India invaded by the Muslim invaders, and also one has to, Buddhist India was invaded by the Brahminic invaders. That is also one has to take it note. And then we try to talk about history, the where Indian philosophy, he tried to locate this one. It is a struggle. Indian history is nothing but a struggle between the Buddhism and also it is Brahmanism for the supremacy. He tried to say this thing. That way he tried to look at the revolution and counter-revolution. There he tried to use the Marxist approach terminology to understand the society historical materialism in a different level. The way he tried to talk about the revolution, Buddhism as a revolutionary force, and is a Hinduism and Brahmanism is a counter-revolutionary. Let me talk about, I'll come later to the point where historical construction and why historical construction is important, why this element is missing in presenting Indian philosophy. And 6th century, the 2nd century to it is 8th century AD, what happened, the philosophy, the mostly consolidation of the philosophical systems, what we are knowing today, it is there. And after that, there's no growth in philosophy. Like that, we can present the same thing. Some of the ancient past, it is considered as the Indian philosophy. There, one can see the problems with this kind of thing. Then let me see. Here, I would like to project some more ideas on the dominant construction of Indian philosophy. As I told, Ambedkar try to interrogate the Indian philosophy, dominant construction of the Indian philosophy by providing his own approach. Later, I'll come to this one. What is his philosophical approach? I'll come later. Let me look at what is the dominant construction of Indian philosophy in this country. But it is dominant construction of Indian philosophy in this country. You know it very well. It is a Brahmanical. It is idealistic philosophy. And it is philosophy projected without having history. But you know it very well, all ideas, and including philosophical ideas, are located in a social context. Ideas are deliberately delinked from the social the ideas have social meaning. Ideas have social meaning. And that way, when you try to talk about what we can say this thing, and the Brahminic class not ready to sacrifice their privileges, it is obvious for this class, safeguard their interest.
Professor, you were mute for some time, because that point is very important, that the ideas are socially, are removed from the social context. Can you please repeat? Yeah, please repeat those 2-3 sentences, the previous ones. Very important sentences.
Yeah. No, what I would like to say, the philosophical ideas, it look at any ideas. One, not only just one has to understand the ideas and text and all. Text are looked at in a context. Behind this context, the events, there's the people are there. People have their social affiliations are there. Without understanding just as ideas, unifying ideas, the principles, it doesn't make any sense. That's what it is argued, that the ideas, one ideas has a social meaning. It is arised out of the crisis and also out of the necessity. Any ideas are coming forward, and that one has to see that one. But in India, it is not happened and all. They know it very well, and the ideas without historical context and all, they want to present it, this kind of ideas. And further, they would like to say this thing, the Indian philosopher, they don't want to look at any kind of change. They don't want to acknowledge any kind of change. Very often they use the tactics of assimilation, assimilating the other. That is, they don't want to allow any kind of they don't recognize any kind of differences that goes against their interest. In fact, most of the ideas are contesting against this one. You know it very well how the Buddhism also, they want to make it as a part of is a continuity of the Hinduism, that we can see. That way it is one kind of assimilation it is there. The better way to keep the people co-opting and assimilation, that is the method they try to use it. And it is the presenting Indian philosophy as a unified system is a deliberate attempt to dilute the very spirit of the heterodox philosophy, the contest where these philosophies, in fact, they contested the Brahminical philosophy. Without seeing that kind of the merit of that principle, you want to say assimilate that one can understand the politics of assimilation very much. Then when come to not only that one, when come to the modern India, mostly the Indian philosophy, it is got constructed in the time of the colonial rule, the where Indian liberal Indian intellectuals, it is happened to be came from the social, it happened to be the Brahminic class. That way, we can see the whole range of philosophy, you know it very well. Aurobindo, Vivekananda, and all so many philosophers, you know it very well. And there, they try to project as Indian spiritualism as a counterpose to the Western materialism or colonial modernity or other way rationality. In fact, the irrationality, it is a counterpose for the rationality. That's what we can say. That way, in the context of the independent struggle, this may have some kind of meaning might be there, but we know it very well, the hollowness of this thing, when you try to evaluate within our context, we know it very well and all. They try to invoke the golden past, you know, the social reformers and all, they invoke the golden past, and they try to project some kind of uninterrupted historical past of the philosophy, then Vedas, Upanishads, and Vedanta. Then the kind of link they want to establish, you know it very well. And it is today the whole Indian philosophy, modern times, Vedanta and its idealism emerges the only philosophical taste of India at the cost of consciously marginalizing the other religions or the Indian philosophical traditions. That's what happens this one. Ultimately, what happened as a result, there we can see some kind of merger of the Brahminical and Vedic philosophy and Hindu philosophy, Hindu and also Indian. That way, Brahmanism re-established as a Hindu philosophy. The Hindu philosophy becomes celebrated as Indian philosophy. Today, what you are known about the Indian philosophy, it is nothing but this kind of philosophy. The Brahminical philosophy, it dressed up cosmetically, dressed up in a different level. This is Indian philosophy by it is assimilating some other philosophical systems, and without even taking considering the spirit of the philosophical system. That way, they try to develop one kind of the logical philosophy. By negating the world, they try to project they try to present some kind different kind of philosophies they develop in the Vedanta, it very well. And here, it doesn't mean that there's no critical against this dominant construction of the philosophy in India. There's definitely some approaches are very much it is in India. And it is a philosophy. Philosophers has to reflect on the social and cultural practices in which they live. In fact, in India, the caste has its fundamental social reality that shapes and influences everyday social life. That you know it very well. Exactly here, the way the scholar, Indian philosopher, lives in the one woman, that is Pratima Bhave, rightly present that thing, why there is no development in a social political philosophy in India. Even now also people try to even say this thing, they quote the Kautilya as a social philosopher, that they didn't see development anything and all. There she tried to make a point. The philosophers in India failed in their task in as much as they did nothing towards developing political, social, and moral philosophy in India. One reason for this non-development may be that philosophical thought was a monopoly of the Brahmin caste, whose privileges would have been under attack if questions were to be asked about the social system. That maybe it is also, for me also, it is convincing the way there is no development in the social and political philosophy means we have to be critical about the society and also critical about our social system and moral system. They know it very well, the system is immoral. They know it very well, it is undemocratic. Then what kind of social, political, moral philosophy you can expect? They expect this one. And apart from this thing, then the people like that, there's some other thinkers, even the dominant who are engaged with the Indian philosophy, they're also identified, some sensible scholars identified the problems involved with the philosophical writings in India. They're without questioning and without having the people also carrying certain kind of, they try to identify two philosophers I would like to mention here. One is Surendranath Dasgupta. You might have familiar with his books, History of Indian Philosophy, 5 volumes it is written. And other man is Daya Krishna. And he's the S.N. Dasgupta, he tried to say there are certain myths, dogmas in Indian philosophy, writing in Indian philosophy. The writers of philosophers has affinity with some kind of dogmas in Indian philosophy, especially the doctrine of the rebirth, the doctrine of the moksha, and doctrine of the karma. These are the things, they made them the ethics and religion subservient to the philosophy. That means he tried to say this thing, why karma siddhanta it is there, in order to justify the inequalities in the society, and then they bring out without people not allowing the people to question, justifying this kind of inequalities in a society, there's the karma theory as a dogma. There's a dogma. Dogma means you can't understand it, only belief. Blind belief, we can't question. This dogma is carried even out today also. Then other philosophers, in a continuation of that one, Daya Krishna I talk about, there are certain myths about Indian philosophy that influence the writers in presenting the Indian philosophy. He tried to say this thing, Indian philosophy is essentially spiritual. This is a statement used by the Radha Krishna. Not only Radha Krishna, people also very often used to make this Indian philosophy essentially spiritual, and the acceptance of the authority of the Veda, and the way development and classifications of the Indian philosophical schools. There he tried to say this, Indian philosophy divide orthodox and heterodox schools based on the acceptance of the authority of the Veda, and then this Indian philosophy. These are the myths, that's what he tried to talk about. The way Daya Krishna, these are the myths only. Without questioning the myths, people also carry. And it is also not only myths, history, it is not the Indian philosophy presented in non-historical level presented. He also tried to talk about history means always a story of the change. development and differentiation and also innovation. And it is most of the philosophers of India, they're immune to change. And they try to present the mummified philosophy they try to present in India. That's what Padaya Krishna say this thing. Philosophy is a living tradition. It is not which is not the one. It is always goes on changing. That these people try to, they are not. It is concerned about this thing. These are the myths and all. Of course, how far they personally they developed further philosophies and how far it is influenced, that is a different question. And they raise the issues. There may be limitations might be there and all. Apart from this thing, the people who are questioning the dominant construction of the Indian philosophy, it is definitely the people, philosophers influenced by the Marxism. They try to give the materialistic interpretation of Indian philosophy. You know, the two such thinkers, we can say two, not only two, three, we can say this thing. One is the Devi Prasad Chattopadhyaya, and other is M.N. Roy, and other is Rahul Sankrityayan, we can see this thing. And when try to Devi Prasad Chattopadhyaya, he's written a book. It is What is Living and What is Dead Indian Philosophy and Lokayata. And it is M.N. Roy tried to talk about materialism as a book has written. He tried to say this thing, except it is Sankhya and it is Charvaka and certainly the Yoga, Vedanta, do not recognize the philosophers. And then come to Devi Prasad Chattopadhyaya, he tried to see this thing. Indian philosophy is a conflict between the thesis and antithesis, like that. It is conflict between the idealism and materialism. He tried to talk about, and that level he tried to look at against the idealism. He tried to see the materialistic philosophy and the way naturalistic philosophy and the Lokayata philosophy. Such level he tried to look at it. Then he tried to roots of the Lokayata philosophy, materialistic philosophy. Even celebrated the classical, the Hindu philosophical system also it takes out and all. And there his argument is that idealists were pleading for irrationalism and surrender of logic and all. In the name of idealism, only one kind of rationalism is there. It is Vedanta philosophy and all other level. The way he tried to develop the story of the Indian philosophy and against the idealism, and he also tried to look at this kind of then when come to this one, this is where it is there, and it is when come to there have some kind of the definitely interesting points are there, but at the same time we didn't see even till now the alternative philosophical picture in a comprehensive level. We didn't find anything and all. There also maybe the philosophy they try to just understand is, but without even bringing out the idea of the caste, discussing the caste system, it is something, the any kind of critical engagement with Indian philosophy also incomplete. That's what I believe. And there it is a different kind of understanding is very much is required. Of course, they try to project they to provide some kind of tools to understand or negate the dominant philosophical systems in this country. And by the same time, I believe that thing. The Indian society in India, there is a strong critical philosophical traditions are there in India. From the time of the ancient time to the modern times, ancient to the contemporary times. There we can see the way against the parallel to the Vedic Brahminical philosophy in a classical age, we have seen Sramana philosophers are there. Sramana tradition it is there. Buddhism, Jainism, Ajivikas and Lokayata, these are Sramana traditions are early Sankhya. These are the people. Sramana tradition is very strong. When come to the modern time, the medieval times, there the politics, the kind of spiritual traditions are there. Very radical bhakti traditions we have seen. It is where bhakti traditions they come with the different kind of theology. The Brahminic class revising their own Indian philosophical system. They're there. It's just that one they bring the social issue, social equality, social justice. The way radical bhakti philosophy, the medieval saints and yogis mostly drawn from the artisan communities and the can see the Ravidas, Kabir, Potulu, Rivera Brahman, Vemana, and these kinds of philosophers. Everywhere we can find this in. And when come to modern times, you know it very well. There's a tradition. It is there. The Jyotiba Phule, and where he tried to say this thing against the Brahmins. The where he tried to look at the Puranas. It reverse the Avatara theory, how he tried to work out Avatara as a myth and whose interests are there, politics of the Avatara is how it exposed that one, and non-Brahminical kind of philosophy, how try to put forward. And next is the Phule and Ayodhya Das. It is some kind of the philosophies identified with the Tamil Buddhism, and the way there's no caste, and against the Aryans, and it is a casteless and religionless philosophy. And these are also at the same Buddhism. It is also practice located in cultural practices. It is there. The invoking the cultural religious past of the people. It is there. Of course, it is in before even Ambedkar. We can see this kind of thing, and it is at the same time Lakshmi Narasu, somewhat rationalistic Buddhism. It is there. The way people engage with this Buddhism, and that is we can in contemporary times, modern times, in the colonial times, this also plays important. You know, the Periyar, how it is there, and engaged with this thing, reason, rationality, how it plays important role. And very particularly, the self-respect plays important role. Then I believe that thing when Ambedkar, he is a culmination. This is not only these are isolated phenomena. This also has historical continuity. It is there. The way Vedas, Upanishads, and Vedanta continuity that I have to establish, there also some kind of the continuity it is there. It is Shramana traditions, radical Bhakti poets, and it is also the Phule, Periyar, Ambedkar. All these things are culminated in the Ambedkar, I believe it. Ambedkar as a figure, it is a continuity, it is there, and a culminating figure, and also from the oral tradition to the written traditions, and also much more spiritual tradition to the some more rationalistic traditions. And one can see some kind of culminating figure. There we can see the full-fledged picture of the philosophy of Ambedkar, the Ambedkar's approach in a critical philosophical traditions, the tradition which is naturalistic, the tradition is this worldly, and where social rationality plays important role, one kind of moral spiritualism it is there, and above all this thing, it is in search of just society, equality, and human dignity lies very much there in critical philosophical traditions. Then this is what I believe that let me try to say this thing, when come to the Ambedkar's part, I try to locate Ambedkar's the historical context where we can locate him, what kind of inheritance, legacy of the our cultural past is kind of Ambedkar had. And when try to look at let us look at the how Ambedkar interrogated the Indian philosophical systems, dominant Indian philosophical systems, very particularly the Brahminical literature, dominant Hinduism, the Vedic literature, Upanishads, Sutras, Dharmasastras, and Puranas, and all mythology, which are considered as a sacred eternal truth. And these things is under scrutiny. It is not, you know, the kind of the illustrations, the way, the kind of the quotings. You are sometimes we also used to get bored to go with this thing, all quotations and all, but he's meticulously try to provide this thing to justify his reasoning and all, the way he quoted from the different sources, all the Vedas, Upanishads, Dharmasastras, and in different occasions he tried to give that kind of references, and that way by engaging that one, by critically engaging one kind of hermeneutic reading of the text, we can see in Ambedkar that by engaging, by to provide the new meaning to the text, we try to provide and all, that way it is he tried to look at. Then he tried to say this thing, you people may differ from the Vedas to the Smritis and Bhagavad Gita. It is almost same content. He tried to say the philosophy of Hinduism will be the same whether one takes the Manusmriti as its gospel or whether one takes Veda and Bhagavad Gita as the gospel of Hinduism. Is almost same. We try to look at this one, and that level it is there. Ambedkar, one can see the there more than not only text. You try to look at text historically. You want to look at text in historically, and second is that in the philosophical text also, which is prioritizing and all there. If I talk about how social priorities plays important role than their philosophy, even their own philosophical text, if I talk about and all. And very often, we used to then come to Indian philosophy, people are very often engaged with textual analysis, they try to say this thing, and where Ambedkar also equally considerate about the textual analysis. He has a method. They're also engaged the text, what they try to project this thing, this is our philosophy and all. They try to see the riddles of Hinduism or other things. Then he try to point out as the internal critic, not external critic. That is a different issue. As internal critic of Hinduism, he tried to provide the inconsistencies and contradictions involved within the text. One way he is critical about the text and its social implication by applying the methods of the rationalistic, realistic, and historical approach. And all his attempts to engage with the text, and it's also look at this thing, he made all possible attempts in grasping the underlying social phenomena of the very celebration of the text or belief or religion. That way, Ambedkar purpose, we thought that why he has to write it so much about this thing, we also not in a position to go further. Now, but we can see that we want to decode what is the underlying social phenomena, what is the historical context, what is the social context it is there and all, what is the affinity of the ideas with these people, the text and the philosophers of the time it is there, that is. Then let me further elaborate how it is some of the ideas related to the critical about the dominant Brahminical philosophy, concepts of the philosophy data. Then we know the philosophy, as I told already, based on some kind of the myths and celebrate some kind of lies. It is there and all. First myth is like a myth of Sanatana. People very often used to say Sanatana, it is there. Our philosophy is Sanatana, it is eternal, it is God-given, like that he used to say. But Ambedkar tried to say this thing in his methodology. He believes in the change. Any society, in Indian society also undergone changes in a different times of period. And it is not a Sanatanity. Even Hinduism itself has goes on a lot of changes, it is there. It is, there he tried to talk about the Hindu society has changed from time and time, and oftentimes the change is most radical kind. In this connection, compare the riddle from Himsa to Ahimsa and Ahimsa to Himsa, or even the riddles of philosophy, riddles of Hinduism. He tried to find out so many kind of riddles and the changes within this kind of, it is there, whether to celebrate which is first Veda, which was priorities, Vedas or Upanishads, or it is the Smritis, that kind of things. Definitely it is historic philosophical ideas has to interrelate it in the context where it is there. This is nothing like that myth. The Sanatana is nothing like that, it is there. So it's a myth of Sanatana. More than this thing, Ambedkar direct attack is on Vedas. People try to say this thing, it is infallible. All the Indian philosophy, the Hindu philosophy, it is developed on the identification with the acceptance of the authority of the Veda. They call it Orthodox schools. The others which are not accepting the schools, they are called as a Nastika schools or heterodox schools. That means where Ambedkar made a point, very simple point against the Vedas and all. Vedas are the most mischievous dogma. He tried to talk about infallibility. Vedas tried to say the infallibility. They are not wrong. They try to provide some kind of capital T, eternal truth, infallible, apaurushaya. And even without having any kind of the critical look, the people also believing it. Then it is a dogma, it is a spread, Brahmin spread among the masses. Ambedkar tried to consider this one kind of dogma, Brahmin spread among the people and all. But when try to look at the philosophy means questioning, doubting. No knowledge is possible without doubting, without questioning that one. He believes doubt is the source of knowledge. Knowledge will possible only through it is doubting. And that way he tried to endorse the opinion of the Buckle. It is evident that until doubt begins, progress was impossible. Without doubt, there will be no inquiry, and without inquiry, there will be no knowledge. Further, Ambedkar shows this thing, the Vedas contain nothing that can be said to be spiritually or morally elevating. And this is only the Brahmins. To uphold the authority of the Vedas is to uphold their own position. It is there I talk about. And that way, it is said that Ambedkar declared that thing, Vedas are worthless books that contain nothing but invocation to the tribal gods to destroy enemies, loot their property, and give to their followers. He continued further that the time has come to Hindu mind must be freed from these ideas which are propagated by Brahmins. Without this, liberation of India has no future and all. He tried to say this thing, one has to free from this kind of ideas. This is how Hindu people try to say this. It is a Hinduism is a way of life. We used to say this. The main problem is that we have to be, the Hindus has to be unlearned from this kind of way of life we try to talk about. Unlearning, that is the starting point for the philosophy of Ambedkar. If they do that, to provide a new kind of approach we try to talk about. Apart from this thing, let me share some more point also. Then he tried to say, let me take water. Yeah. Yeah. No. So he interestingly differentiated the philosophy, the Brahmanism, Vedanta, and Brahmaism. Brahmaism, Vedanta, and Brahmanism. In fact, all related, but at the same time, he differentiated. The way Brahmaism, the Upanishadic ideal based on the some kind of Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi, and all kind of these things. Some kind of democratic kind of potential is there like that. The Brahman is there. You also are Brahman. You are not really. Even though God is unknowable, but you are the this thing, that possible democratic kind of philosophy might be there like that. Ambedkar felt. Then when come to the Vedanta philosophy try to accept the Brahman, but at the same time negate the world. The way the different systems developed, Shankaracharya and all, where Ramanuja and all, they're negating the world, making the world as illusion, and that way they try to different. When come to the Brahmanism, we try to talk about what are the features of the Brahmanism. Brahmanism is believe in the dogma of the Chaturvarna, sanctity of infallibility of Vedas, and sacrifice to gods, the only salvation. And these are the way it is. Unless it is there graded inequality and all these things, it is the hereditary level how Brahmins identified their kind of supremacy and all this. These are the features that way try to differentiate somewhat within the philosophy, somewhat even though they don't want to become with that idea of the Brahmaism, and where some kind of the spirit of democracy may be there, and even that is not there, and how Vedanta philosophy and the Brahmanic philosophy, and that means there's some other, they know it very well. When come to that kind of philosophy, there's a problem. They don't want to lose their vintage. That's why very cunningly come out this kind of philosophy is there. And for them, more than the philosophy, as I told, it is the dharma is important. Not only dharma, it is social law is important and all. That's why Indian philosophy, no moral philosophy, only authority, legal philosophy is there. Ambedkar says that thing. He considered that is Brahmanic philosophy derived from the morality. He argues that Hinduism as a legal philosophy and not qualified as a moral philosophy. He said that I hold Hinduism. There's no distinction between the legal philosophy and moral philosophy. That is because Hinduism, there is no distinction between legal and moral, and legal being also moral. Here I would like to say this thing. The way even the people try to, even Sankara and all, the people try to talk about the great philosophers, then their philosophers are ultimately subservient to the Dharma Shastras. So which one is greater means the Manu in a crisis situation, not philosophy, it is a Manu become a mantra. Manu become a medicine, he tried to talk about. Not only this thing, most of the philosophers, they develop their philosophies to subservient to the legal Dharma Shastras. Dharma Shastras, you know it very well, the way to keeping the Chaturvarna intact, that is the Dharma. Varnashram Dharma, that is a philosophy, it is there and all. There Ambedkar, it is for him, Ambedkar, it is not that one, the way ethics as a first philosophy, if I talk of morality is a central point and all he want to, that should be the basis there. He reminds me as the continental philosopher Levinas, and talked about ethics as a first philosophy. It is not it is a legal philosophy, become a philosophy, it is as opposed to projected as a philosophy. The ethics, the purpose of philosophy is that it is one should have it is ethical purpose, not other than that anything it is there. Then let me talk. Then apart from this thing, the Indian philosophy, the Hindu philosophy very often celebrate a text is their Bhagavad Gita. Ambedkar tried to say this thing, it is a post-Buddhist text. That's why it may have some kind of merits. then try to bring about the guna theory, and of course there also he tried to find out the problems. He identified this thing, the way there were counter-revolutionary forces, it is emerged, and then he tried to look at this. Then what he tried to talk about, this is a Gita defends the dogma of religion on a, it is a book on book of religion. It is neither a book of religion nor a treatise on philosophy. It is not a book of religion or treatise of philosophy. People used to say the philosophic defense of religion or Hinduism. People try to talk about. It is not like that. He tried to talk about. In fact, it is the philosophical defense of the counter-revolution. It is there against the Buddhism. The counter-revolutionary forces is there. That is the time. It is the way this kind of texts are came into surface, like that we used to say. And last one more point I would like to say, the way Ambedkar tried to differentiate it between the rule. To look at the annihilation of the caste, you can find about the rules. Mostly the Indian philosophers, the way either it is Vedas and Upanishads and all the kind of philosopher, Dharma Shastra, Smritis, they are very much is concerned about the rules. Rules is like a recipe books. You have to mechanically, one has to follow. They try to say what to do, what to do, what not to do. These are the rules. But Ambedkar differentiate the principles. Principles are out of commitment, out of responsibility, what to do. That way, it is also not only ethical concerns and also responsible things. It may be, forget about whether it may be using good results, right or wrong, but his principles are something different. The way his philosophy based on the principles, but not the rules. Then he tried to talk about it is dharma. People use it. Dharma is nothing but a following the one kind of what ought to be for certain kind of rules related to yajna. Either the Mimamsaka philosophy, it is what it is. Even later, maybe Upanishads also try to extend that kind of same kind of mindset. Certain level it is there and all. Then ultimately it is the rules and regulations. Against the rules, he tried to develop the one kind of the philosophy based on the principles you want to develop and all. And ultimately, then what ultimately comes? Of course, the critical part of all right, critical about Indian philosophy, all right, and what he's offering, that maybe one may ask that kind of questions. Yes, definitely is a critical about the authoritative, dogmatic, ritualistic, God-centered religion, and favor of rationalistic, democratic, and humanistic religion. He believes religion sustains social and cultural traditions of the society, but also upholds the spiritual values. Religion as a medium, acts as a medium of the morality I talk about. Then in that context, he tried to say this thing, Indian philosophy based on Hinduism neither qualifies as a philosophy nor as a religion. That is a radical statement Ambedkar tried to make out this one. And the philosophy of Hinduism therefore neither satisfy the test of social utility nor does satisfy the test of individual justice. That's what he tried to talk about. That way it is there. Then in place of that one, he tried to argue that thing, something new. There we have to new kind of philosophy it is there. And for that, there should be change in fundamental notions of our life, complete change in our value system. That means complete change in our outlook and in attitude towards the men and things is very much important. For this, you must discard the authority of the Shastras and destroy the other religion of the Shastras. He tried to say this thing. Ultimately, he comes to there and he tried to say this thing in place of that one as a righteous social life, I told. And there, he tried to bring about a counterpose with this one in his Buddha and his Dhamma. He tried to construct Indian philosophy and solid foundations of the rationalistic, human, and democratic culture. Ambedkar here, the way connecting the religion and political governance, very interesting the way it is connected. He believes moral community that internalize the principle of equality, liberty, and fraternity should be the foundation for the democratic government. See, the religion to the morality, morality to religion, religion to the governance, how he comes to there and all. There he tried to, that's why this Buddha has a social message. Many people try to read the Buddha in a different level, but where Ambedkar engaged the Buddha in relation to the social message. Then he tried to talk about the equality, liberty, fraternity, not only this one, And there he tried to talk about the how prajna is important, and more than prajna, he tried to talk about dhamma and adhamma and saddharma, how to dhamma, adhamma, and saddhamma, how he differentiate, and how dhamma become a saddhamma, what kind of qualification should be there, and internally what points it is there, how prajna plays important role in a philosophical level. Prajna plays, intelligence, rationality plays important. More than prajna, he tried to say that thing, more than prajna, it is karuna is important. The connection, the way how you relate to the people and all, the kind of how you are compassionate the people. And more than prajna and karuna, it is not enough. And we also have to have it is maitri, he tried to talk about. Above than this thing, maitri. You should be in a position to invite the enemy. That is the purpose of the philosophy. That means ultimately that how you are connected to the fellow human beings, how do you respect fellow human, that is the central to the philosophy. Even though you want to engage with Buddhism, but where he is revisiting of Buddhism has a different kind of, he tried to come up with the different kind of philosophical potential that is somewhat totally differs with the germ of some traditional philosophers engaged with the Buddhism. Ultimately, what he tried to talk about, then there is attempts are there in a modern time social reform. When you look at the annihilation of the caste, he tried to talk about first reforming the society is important. Social is important and all. More than politics, society is important. More than the law, is the morality is important. Morality of the society is important and all. There he tried to talk about the ultimately what is the central point, what philosophy Ambedkar talk about, it is nothing but there he talk about annihilation of caste is the ultimate underlying principle of his philosophy. The annihilation of the caste is ultimate underlying philosophy, it is there and all, and righteous social life is central to his social, religious, and political philosophy that interlies the principles of the prajna, karuna, maitri, and saddhamma. And more than that thing, his philosophy aims at participative, sharing, and communicative, and moral and democratic society. There, the strength of Ambedkar is there. Ultimately, what is the? Let me conclude here. Ultimately, where Ambedkar? What is Ambedkar? Then try to say the Ambedkar. I believe Ambedkar is a radical philosopher. Against the caste, there's nothing. The caste system. Anybody who is against the caste system is the worst kind of the social system. It is much more worse than the slavery I talk about. Against the philosopher who is against the caste system who is more than the radical philosopher than against the caste system. The man try to argue against the caste system is a radical philosopher. And then I believe that thing he's also come to the political philosophy. I try to locate him, somewhere it is he doesn't fit in the dominant political philosophical traditions like that liberalism, conservatism, and Marxism, and he may be associated at the same time differentiate from all these things. Ambedkar demands new language to make him understand. Many people try to locate, very blindly try to locate him as a liberal level. He's a liberal philosopher like that I talk about. But I believe that if you look at closely, is something like against, the recent time there's a criticism against the liberalism by communitarianism. And somewhere we can locate him in communitarianism also. There may be is a possibility of the conservative communitarianism also possible. But Ambedkar, I can locate him see him as it is a progressive communitarianism, we can say this thing. And that way, the way he talk about the community, moral community, and the way the kindership is very much important, and the way social child, I believe that thing, the people make meanings in their life in a social context, they are really quoting and all. That way I see something, and more than that, in other way we can say this thing, Ambedkar can be used. It is maybe effectively mediated between the liberalism and communitarianism. That's what I believe that one. Where Western political philosophy is in a crisis, to overcome crisis, the Ambedkar is I believe is a central point where we can mediate the crisis to overcome the Western political theory, and also equally related to that one. Above all, I believe Ambedkar, there is, certain binaries are there, it very well. So Ambedkar goes beyond that binaries, it is there. The traditional modern dichotomy, one it is there, and religion, science and religion dichotomy is there. And he goes beyond that one, traditional modern dichotomy, science and religion dichotomy, it very well. He feels the way how it is a meeting point. I try to talk about his philosophy is when I talk about the humanistic religion, godless religion, he tried to propagate and all. That way, yeah, science and religion, even the Buddhism and Marxism also, the mediated, how he mediated and all that you can know, you can see to that one, the way the science and reason and religion is a meeting point, and both he tried to redefine his own way. That may be the strength of that one. Apart from this thing, there is a meeting, he merged of this one, we can see social, political, and religion are merged together. We can see on the moral ground, that where we can see the importance of Ambedkar, we can see this one. And apart from this one, Ambedkar looks for the idealistic society, the society where people can communicate, society where people can live with the dignity and respect, and that is the society. We have the society that ensures the what we can say one kind of associated life that he calls as a democratic society. The democratic society, not in the word the way today we claim as a democratic society. The democratic society means is much more deeper meaning it is there for him, and that is a democratic society as a principle that makes reconstructing the society and whole philosophy driving towards to achieving the some kind of ideal society where the democratic society is possible. Thank you.
Shona, if we have to select one lecture which can give the complete overall view of Baba Saheb's philosophy, I would reckon that this is the lecture. In less than, in such a short span of time, the way you covered the topic, Anna, is very astonishing. The kind of journey that you took us through, the historical, the journey of ideas, and the kind of the clarity that you gave is so deep. And I think more and more people engage with this sort of the ideas that you have talked about, creating a very clear framework of how to understand Baba Saheb Ambedkar as a philosopher, not just an armchair philosopher, but somebody who is engaged with his ideas as a weapon, destroying the ideas which are anti-social ideas, destroying the ideas which are against humanity, destroying the ideas which are against the human dignity, destroying those vicious ideas which has no bearing on the social development, social work, or the development of individual. Anna, that was a very, very fantastic lecture. And now we would like to transcribe it. Actually, this needs to be transcribed and circulated widely. I was while I was listening to your lecture, Anna, a few things has come to my mind, like like this, like we know that the academia is dominated by a particular class of people, and as you said, that even the philosopher Baba Saheb Ambedkar as a philosopher, because there is a class of people who won't entertain those ideas, radical philosophical ideas, as you said, which challenges their power in academia. So I think in this situation, as a like when we talk about philosophizing, we talk about creating a knowledge which will be like an instrument of changing the world. So Anna, can you tell us how important it is for the Ambedkarite movement to become a knowledge producing community?
Yeah, his whole emphasis that the education, this is the only weapon he tried to say this thing, only the knowledge. Not only knowledge and all, it is knowledge internalizing in our everyday life that use the contest against the dominance and against the authority and against the power. That is the purpose. Just not just by knowing it makes any sense and all. That's why there he tried to differentiate between the philosophy and religion. He considers much more for the religion than the philosophy. Religion, philosophy, not just by knowing is enough. The education as an instrument to assert oneself and all, to liberate oneself and all, to inaugurate one's own self, the way education, knowledge plays important role. Definitely there, the Ambedkar is very much is particular about that one. That's what.
Anna, one of the you talked about knowledge and action, and one of the interesting fact that has emerged from your lecture is when you talked about the Shramana philosophy, and the word Shraman means efforts, action, and then you went on to talk about the radical bhakti philosophers. Most of them came from the so-called artisan background. They worked with their hands. They
Yes.
did, and when we came to the modern, the enlightened figures like Phule, Shao, and Baba Sahib Ambedkar, they were all men of action. Like Phule was doing things, and he was not just thinking. So the question is, John Dewey says somewhere that the person who understand the cause and effect was the founder of a technology, because and when we look at the Buddhist philosophy or the Shramana philosophy, it's about understanding the causes of the different effects which we see in the world today. So, and that is the basis of science. So when we talk about moral philosophy, it's complete neglect of the moral philosophy, the social philosophy, and the political society philosophy in the Indian subcontinent, because this Indian culture is a misnomer. Let's talk about the geographical Indian subcontinent, the absence of that, and which takes us to also very important dimension, that absence of scientific philosophy also now, isn't it? Like the labor, the way the philosophy of doing things, the philosophy of creating things is completely absent in this, dominated by Brahminical ideas, which is about the word Brahma itself, like the formulas for producing suras, like that. It comes from there. So what I'm trying to get it at is, it's not just about the failure to produce the moral and ethical philosophy, as you said, the social philosophy, as political philosophy, as you said, Anna, but also a complete failure to even produce a scientific philosophy. What is your gloss on this?
No, that's what you want to have the way how cleverly they want to have the scientific knowledge at the same time for the how they benefited by the colonial modernity, it very well. The what way they are benefited by the kind of colonial modernity, the science, the fruits of science, they want to have it. In the social realm, they are totally maintain the anti-science attitude that it is there. No, that's why in Herbert Park is, if you, even society, the technological society, even the science also, if it is given in a particular society, it will take particular character. In a class society, it has a class character. Even the information society, we thought that it is knowledge reaches different level. Without changing the society, science or technology doesn't have any role on her. In technology also, you can make much more Brahminical.
True.
Science also make. That's why that Ambedkar knows it. Why there's no development of. You forget about that one. He says that's why they produced more. The innovative in producing the Smritis rather than having the progress in the science. That's what Ambedkar long back is pointed out.
True. Anna, there, like when we involve in these discussions about philosophy, and you said many things so clearly. They come out so well in this lecture. One of the things that has been, a big problem, this golden Vedic age, always talking about the past, that past like this, past like that, inventing some kind of a golden age in the past. But sorry, I because I read a lot of Dewey, so he says that the golden age only lives in the future, not in the past. If there is any golden age, we have to create in the future. So this fascination with Sanatan, this fascination with golden age, this fascination with you used a wonderful word. You said mummified philosophy.
It is a frozen philosophy. Frozen philosophy.
Frozen philosophy, mummified philosophy. It doesn't move. It's actually anti-historical. There is no change. It's stuck in time and place.
The antique philosophy only was celebrating.
Yeah, antiquated philosophy. So this I think we have to, when we counter about this so-called golden Vedic age, and with the kind of the book, that the framework that Baba Sahib Ambedkar created, revolution and counter revolution, Anna. So how do you see that the present academia, particularly inspired by Baba Sahib Ambedkar, has to take this further. How, as a professor of philosophy, what will you tell to your students who are aspiring? Which are the frontiers of the philosophical areas that our students should go forward to, or explore, and bring it forth and engage with?
No, thank you, Mangesh, asking me this question. In fact, it is, after joining, I know it very well, the kind of affairs in philosophy. And rather than looking for some other discipline, I want to engage with Indian philosophy. Then I started, at the same time, I have the problems with the classical Indian philosophy, the way it is institutionalized the country. Then I have initiated the course, that is the course is a critical philosophical traditions of India. There I want to look at the way from the Samana traditions to radical saint to the Phule Periyar Ambedkar course. These are very strong critical philosophical traditions against the dominant traditions. That is one course. That way it is opens up the different kind of approach it is there. And apart from this thing, I also started course in the philosophy of B.R. Ambedkar. It is there. That way in philosophy, to talking about these things, it is not so easy. And it requires some kind of conviction and courage, and also you have to be fight against the system to accommodate these things. It is very much. That way it is, of course, space we fought and we got it also. Nobody can say no to this one also. Then it is, I believe that thing it is try to provide, if not today, tomorrow, if not all, somebody can have the different kind of output. That level, very small intervention I had here as a discipline of philosophy. I want to continue this one, not just by this thing. We also have to produce knowledge about this thing. We have to write articles and books. And it is also, it is not the celebration of Ambedkar as a symbol, or it is a statue is no point. Today we have to celebrate the substance of Ambedkar, ideas of Ambedkar. There's a lot of things, a lot more to engage with Ambedkar it is there. I have some idea. You may have some different idea to read about Ambedkar might be there. Ambedkar provides a space, maybe starting point. From there, you may start and go with him and differ with him, and also different. You are changing context. You can be either elevating him. That way. First of all, you have to engage with Ambedkar. Engaging with Ambedkar means engaging with Indian philosophy, engaging with Indian history, or engaging with ourselves, engaging for the way for the future and all. What kind of future should be there and all. That provides, since this is he tried to capture what is a very critical space of the critical cultural and also knowledge space of the country. Yeah. He tried to provide. Anywhere you can start and anywhere you can enter, and also you can engage.
Very beautifully put. Very, very beautifully put, brother. Please go on. It's very beautifully put. That's, I just couldn't stop myself from saying it. It's nicely put.
That's all right. Some more things you can.
So one question is, this celebration of this particular band of like in India, it is said that this Hitler's biography, Mein Kampf, is sold very widely. Every bookstall, every place you will see this biography. And one of my friends who comes from the Jewish background, he was very struck by the popularity of and the celebration of Hitler in this country by whoever is reading him. And then Baba Sahib Ambedkar talks about this very ugly philosophy of Nietzsche, where he celebrates the Superman. And this country has a fascination for the hero worship and Superman. And Baba Sahib goes into it and talks about how ugly philosophy that is to celebrate a Superman, while the essence of human being, the kind of equality, love for each other. So a very different sort of a paradigm. So brother Keshav, this is just a question, you can gloss over it, that this doctrine of Superman, Nietzsche, Nazi ideas, and the authoritarian state on one hand, which is in the grip of a philosophy, and you rightly said that the power you have sketched a linkage between religious, social, political, all the way up to the who controls the power, who is hegemonic. How do we create a kind of as you said, that philosophizing is not just the individual way; it's a social philosophizing. The ideas are social, so a lot of people need to be engaged. Right?
Philosophy is social.
It's a social. So it's a social process. We have to engage people. Like like talk, discuss ideas like this. So there is an idea, there is a tradition of an ideas in this country, which the ideas are dealing from the society, and Ambedkarism is all about socialization of the positive values and ideas, which are, as you said, which supports the society, which supports the growth of an individual, so on and so forth. So now, how do we go in this direction? Like, how do we socialize this very beautiful philosophical ideas, which are like the action plan? Ideas are always action plan for Baba Sahib Ambedkar in general. So how we socialize this kind of a discussion that we two are having here today?
Yeah, no, Ambedkar very much is argued, as I also hinted 2-3 places. It is a new mindset is required. It I talk about new notion of life is required. Complete change of this one it is required, like that Ambedkar I talk about. But that we are not, even though it is very difficult process, since we are mostly carried and continued with some kind of dogmas, some kind of notions of life. It is imposed on us, even though not deliberately carrying, imposed. We also become part of that one. It is very difficult to even question that kind of this one. It is there. Even let me talk here and all there. That means it's part of our psyche. That's why the Ambedkar tried to say this thing. They take away all the weapons, disarm the people and all.
Our thinking weapons also, our thinking tools, our brains are colonized.
Disarmed to the not giving the education, not even ideas, not giving the weapons and all. Even though every day you have to work with the weapons, you are produce something. But that kind of courage, it is not given under that kind of the way systematically constructed, internalized, induced on us, and that there it is. That's why it is very difficult to fight, difficult to revolt. That's what the Ambedkar very much is trying to point out. The obstacles is there, how to revolt against the system it is there, that very systematically worked out. Even though it is not so easy to carry the weapon and all, it requires some kind of there, but your total mind it is carried. One way that is there, other level, the ahimsa as an ideal and all, where Frantz Fanon and all, they are very much by violence only will inaugurate ourselves. Violate the revolutionary violence that I talk about, Frantz Fanon. He tried to get non-violence. It is not a ideal. It is there and all. People, it is not violence. Even in reality, we can see all our films. We can see the ultimate violent point is ultimate point. Last point is that violence only. The hero is against the villain. That means
Indian culture is a celebration of violence. Indian culture is a celebration of violence. You're right.
Of our feelings and all it is there. That is there. The way it is critical thinkers also is very much how we become people are surrendered to authoritarian state and how we become authoritarian. And how it is, even Gramsci also tried to talk about, they create some kind of consent, not because of ruling class, the forcing you by force, they're making you to believe it. Now you are getting some kind of consent, they created the culture. Not only culture, that may be the philosophy, we can say this one. That somehow things maybe psychologically, it is from the childhood days, it is there and all, worshipping that when authorities, how submissive to the authority it is there. That's why they expected the well-developed industrial society, revolution, nothing is happened. Then they say that there's a psychological reasoning also. It is that they try to talk about the psychoanalysis of Freud and all the critical theory. That when Ambedkar, as a long way, he tried to understand, dissect the society, understand the society, why there is no dissent, no revolt, no this thing against this kind of authoritarian state, authoritarian society. That he tried to say this. At the same time, he is also driving for there's a need to have fight against the kind of this. That way, he psychologically also. It is not a psychologically also try to understand the non-rebelliousness character, and also need to have the rebelling system. One can see in Ambedkar. It is that level also. One can look at the other ignorance, authoritarian. It is there. And because of most of our politics, it is don't want to critical about authority, want to have the minimum adjustment only, it is there and all. That's what it is there. That is the problem. It is with our existing politics, even alternative politics. But rebel is against the system. His whole point is that against the established order, established social order.
Right.
That gives a lot. That speaks a lot of things.
Very nicely said, Anna. Very nicely said, Anna. You know, this philosophical foundation, alternative philosophy, we cannot even call it alternative philosophical foundation because it's not alternative in a sense of that. But as you said, that, you know, it affects the lives of millions of people in India. So actually, this is the dominant philosophical tradition of India that you are talking about, you know, which goes into houses like bhaktis, poets, though they are now, you know, their biographies are Brahmanized, but their essential ideas are very radical. And you know, I think when we're talking about the powers, the change in the power structure, I think is also very important to talk about taking out the power out of the philosophical system that are celebrated and, you know, put on the pedestal by the established academia produced by a particular social order. I think that is one of the important tasks that our young generation need to take up onto themselves. And I think, Anna, this is just a last thing, but, you know, before we conclude, do you want to say something?
No, I am very, very engaging me nicely. This thing. No, Ambedkar, we are somewhere we are obsessed and stuck up with the idea of the political power, but we didn't understand the power in this thing, and power pervades in everyday social relations that we forgot. And Ambedkar also tried to say this. Then we lost everything when small political gains somewhere not succeeded. Then we lost everything like that. We used to disappoint. That is not the case. Power lies in everyday life, asserting, talking, and also public, making your presence felt, in asserting your visibility in public space. That is also power. And Ambedkar tried to say this thing: power. It is. We also have to know about how to renounce the power also. Somewhere he mentioned not only in the power, renouncing the power also. That is also one kind of power. It is there.
Yeah.
That is a problem. That's the whole politics of country. Maybe it may have different reasons might be there. No need to accuse anybody. No point in accusing that one. And then by philosophically we give the different direction or strength for the people, and it may give new direction to them rather than totally stuck up, losing, the demotivating, and making it become a withdrawal, and ultimately become a part of the dominant political parties, mainstream political parties. But we can make our presence felt, and also we can establish power in every form, everyday life. And that is a different, for the different kind of, to articulate this kind of thing, it is a different kind of philosophy. It is there. Philosophy no need to go anywhere, and that itself is a making it as a claim of this one is a philosophy that gives more strength, I believe, for the people. And every small action also plays important role. Even today we have this small meeting like this. It has its own point. It is there.
True. And very true, Anna. Very true. And now I think one day, you know, we would like to invite you to talk about the philosophy of religion. You know, the way you put it across. And I think today, you know, what you did is really wonderful. I have no words to express what kind of a clarity that you brought it to the topic today. You know, reconstruction in philosophy, or the reconstruction of the world around. And if philosophy is not about changing the world around, and if, you know, it's losing our head into some abstract ideas, into something that doesn't have any bearing on the development of the human beings, I think that's not philosophy. I think that's against philosophy. It's not the philosophy. It's even it is not qualified to be called philosophy. So Keshav, Anna, thank you so much for being here with us today. And I'm sure that a lot of people listening to us, and you today particularly, you are very erudite lecture today. I have no doubt that, you know, a lot of people will pick up some very great ideas from the lecture today, and they will take things forward. Thank you so much for joining today, Anna. I will just make a small announcement. I will go offline and I will talk to you. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Dear viewers, we have also at 2:30 we got Jesus Chavez, who is going to talk about the internationalization of the Dalit movement under Baba Saheb Ambedkar, that how the Dalit movement was internationalized, and he has done a lot of work on that. Particularly the last decade, the 40s and the 50s, the way Baba Saheb Ambedkar worked and advocated our issues internationally. So stay tuned, join in for this very interesting program, and learn how Baba Saheb Ambedkar used the different strategies to internationalize the Dalit movement. Brother Keshava, thank you, Anna, thank you.
all for sparing your valuable time to listen to me.
Jai Bhim, Anna.
Jai